Welcome in. It's week 6, and we are going to dive into the DFS slate. We're going to run through your cash games and your GPP plays. It's myself. It's our DFS captain, Devin Knotts. Our good buddy Phil Alexander was not able to make it with us tonight, but we have your full week slate for the main slate on DraftKings primarily. And Devin, let's get this rolling here. And I don't know if you have any strategy you want to dump on the people. I don't know if Breaking FanDuel had a good week or not. I know there was a lot of chalk last week. But we can also just start talking about games of the week if you'd rather.
Yeah, Kennesaw State's up 13-7. No, we had a better week for cracking FanDuel. So the last week was weird, right? Because you had Rico Dowdle, who we had as like the must-play guy, so that worked out really well. Rashad White also hit. So the scoring was insane. I think the cash line on FanDuel was like 159, which is amongst the highest I've ever seen. So, but we were at like 163. So I think there were a couple 50-50s that it tied on, but it cashed on like 80% of them. So that was good.
We should have known that Smith and Jigba and Mecca Buka, the former teammates, would just go back and forth all day long.
But literally every player that was chalk hit. I mean, it was a crazy week. So, but it was fun. It was hanging on by a thread because I didn't have Jackson Smith and Jigba. But we survive and we go to 2-3 on the year. So overall, can't complain. It's much better than 1-4. That would have been quite the disaster. Surviving when you have Justin Fields is we'll take it as a win. But on to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's an inflection point there. The difference between 1-4 versus 2-3, or it's like the Bills Patriots game. It's like the Bills could have been 5-0 with the game over the Patriots and be 3 games up, but then that loss, it's like half a game now. So it just feels like the biggest swing in week 5 possible. Let's dive into games of the week. And what are you looking for on your radar for games of the week this week?
Yeah, it's a short slate. It's kind of weird. Why are we doing 2 Monday night games? Like, do the even weeks just get 2? Is that how they're doing it?
We have some buys. We have 2 Monday night games. We have a 9:30 game too, don't we? I think we do.
Yeah. I don't understand what the NFL is doing. Is it so that like ESPN/ABC doesn't have a bad game if they're paying the I don't know. And Buffalo is just never going to be on the primetime slate or on the main slate again. They're just always on primetime.
Yeah.
Okay. So games of the week. There's not a lot. Like there's some spots here. I think Indianapolis, Arizona. Indianapolis 7.5 point favorite. Over under 46.5. Like that's kind of interesting. But Kyler might be out. It's looking probable that he's out. I think people are going to gravitate towards Dallas, Carolina, because both of those defenses are absolutely atrocious. But, you know, is that really a great spot? I wouldn't say it's great. And then we've seen Tampa Bay just continue to get in shootouts. So San Francisco, Tampa Bay. But, you know, the Tampa Bay is a really good run defense. Christian McCaffrey, we'll talk about him, I'm sure, but like he's averaging 3.1 yards per carry, which is shocking, but it's a pretty weird week. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, McCaffrey, I feel like he's having a great season on the receiving end, and he's having a absolutely terrible season on the rushing end. I know over under totals, Jacksonville, Seattle is semi-interesting at the same time. Both of those teams are good defensive teams and want to play that game, but they're sitting at 47.5. Going the Packers going up against Joe Flacco and the Bengals. So here we go. That Joe Flacco could beat the Packers twice, actually, in the first 6 weeks, which would be very interesting considering where we valued the Packers at the beginning of the season. And then I think Chargers in Miami might maybe be on the radar, but the Chargers really need to get that offense rolling, and it hasn't been for the last couple of weeks. Let's go into our cash games. And how are you attacking quarterback this week? Because we don't have the Justin Fields going up against the Cowboys defense slam dunk play of the week this week. I mean, we do have Bryce Young at 4,800, but what are you going to do with your cash game play?
Yeah. I'm not going Flacco, even though I know he's going to be popular at $4,000. Like, I just don't know, and I know he's different because he's bounced around the league so much. But like, how much? How much can a quarterback really learn in like 3 days? Like you think it's simple, but you hear like the play calls that these teams are calling out, and it's like, how can you even learn that language in 3 days? I don't know. I think it's Bryce Young, 4,800 against Dallas. Um, my good friend Trevor Lawrence is there at 5,100, which I'm sure Phil would say is his guy. But I'm not. I'm not doing that, even though the way to beat Seattle is through the air. But I don't think Lawrence is that bad. He's has that Monday night pricing, which is always somewhat favorable. I guess to me, it's pretty. This is where it comes down to, Jeff. It comes down to Mac Jones versus Bryce Young for me.
I was looking at those names. I think the other one, this feels like the most classic letdown spot possible, but Drake May at 5,900 going up against the Saints. We've seen the Saints offense be willing to operate quickly, push the ball, but I do feel like on the road off that Bills game, that just screams letdown spot.
Yeah, like May. I mean, I don't know. I never really play him just because maybe it's a bias, but I mean, 5,900 is a pretty steep price, which I guess Daniel Jones is at 6,000. But like at that point, do you just go Justin Herbert at 63, or like maybe the answer is Matthew Stafford at that point at 64, who's just been on fire. Then you can just target that offense against the Baltimore defense that's completely ravaged with injuries. But I think I'm going cheap. I think I'm going Bryce Young.
I don't blame you at all. I think that there is supposed to be some weather in that game with the Ravens Rams, so that might slow down that passing attack a little bit because we know the Ravens defense is not going to slow down anything. Let's look at running backs now for our running back cash games of the week. I know Alvin Kamara, we're monitoring an injury there. If he scratches at 4,700, you've got Kendry Miller. I mean, Rico Dowdle feels like the slam dunk if Chuba Hubbard is out going up against Dallas's defense in a game that Dowdle has already said is going to mean quite a bit to him.
Yeah, he's going to find the end zone. I mean, that's if given the opportunity. I don't know what's the point of playing Chuba Hubbard this week. I would be surprised if he played. Like you're going to rush him back when Dowdle has shown he's more than capable of playing. I think you just play Dowdle if you can. If you're Carolina, other guys that I like, Quinshon Judkins, 5,900. He just looks special. I think the price is still too cheap. Going up against Minnesota, we've seen Pittsburgh this year. They've sort of been all over the place, and they're coming off a bye, but they gave up over 100 yards to Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker earlier this year. And they've looked a little bit better since then, but they played New England and Minnesota, which neither of those rushing offenses are like that great. So I'm okay with playing him there. And then the final play is really about a decision point that I have to make. And it comes down to, do I want to play a Ram. And I know that you mentioned there's weather there. It's Thursday. Like, am I that concerned about weather on Thursday? Probably not. I'm either playing Kyron Williams or Puka Nakua. I don't know that I want to play both. I think I want to play Nakua. But man, 8,700 is a steep price. And if I play Nakua, that you could play them both. Like you could easily do that and get the floor, but then you run into the issue of what happens if it's a Devontae Adams 2 touchdown game. I think I'm going back to Rashad White. I don't love it, but San Francisco's defense, they're not the fear defense that they once were. Kyron Williams had 33 DraftKings points last week against them. Travis Etienne had 124 yards and a touchdown the week before. So, and Alvin Kamara had 99 yards. So, and Kamara seems to be on his way out of New Orleans. Like, that trade should be coming any day now. It's just a matter of where. So I think the answer is White, Dowdle, and Judkins. But if you can fit McCaffrey in, like, go for it.
And then it's Jonathan Taylor. Is that just too high to get to?
It's too high. It's too high, and I think he's a better. Let me check his price on FanDuel. But it's
10,200 on FanDuel.
How much?
10,200.
Yeah, too high. The issue with Taylor is if you're thinking about going that high on DraftKings, 10,200 is a ridiculous price. Like, he needs 20. Depends on price it, or it depends on where cut lines are. But cut lines have been so high this year. He needs like 23 or 24 points just to hit cash minimum value, which is such a on a half point PPR. That's such a preposterous ask. The reason I would go McCaffrey over Taylor in cash is just the floor. It's just the receptions. You're basically guaranteed a touchdown because of 6 receptions from McCaffrey. So he's starting plus 6 or 7 points. I mean, realistically, maybe even 10, which we saw against Arizona. So I think that's so hard for Taylor to come back from. Certainly he has the upside of 100 yards and 3 touchdowns anytime he touches the field, but it's a hard price.
Yeah, I absolutely understand that. Let's look at our wide receivers now. And I know you mentioned Puka Nacua, but if you're going that direction, and we lost the days of sub 8,000 Puka Nacua. We had a primetime spot last week, and right before we saw that, he was at 7,900 and had that big blow up spot against the Colts, and that'll never return again. But now we're at 8,700 for Puka Nacua. Is that kind of your building the lineup from wide receivers around Puka, or are you looking at other options?
Yeah, I mean, with the pricing at the quarterback position, you can spend up, and you can find ways to do that pretty easily. So I think, at least for me, going with Nacua at that price it just provides such like a safety net. Marlon Humphrey is out. Who's the other? Chidobe Awuzie is out. Kyle Hamilton might be out. Their entire defensive line is out. So Broderick Washington, Nnamdi Madubuike, Roquan Smith is out. So they're still really banged up, even if they get Kyle Hamilton back. So at least for another week, if weather does, if there's over 20 mile an hour wind or torrential downpour, I may pull back on it. But for now, it's kind of just all systems go for Nacua. Just because there's not really if I think about the wide receiver position on this slate, there's not really a guy who I feel has a floor that's anywhere close to Nacua. Jackson Smith and Jigba probably has a decent floor, but my worry with him is he's been catching an unsustainably high amount of his targets. What was encouraging early on in the season was he had 13 targets in week 1. But if you look at the last 3 weeks, he has 9, 5, and 6. Am I paying $7,500 for a guy who has averaged 7 targets over the last 3 games? Not really. That's not really good enough. He has a 35-yard or longer catch in every single game. Is that sustainable? I don't think so. I don't think you can average over 100 yards per game on less than 10 targets per game. At some point, the floor, like your floor is going to. There's a regression that's coming there. So Jamar Chase, I'm not doing. Emeka Igbuka at 72 is just too expensive. So to me, it's with the benefit of a $4,800 quarterback. Yeah, I can spend up at $8,700, and I feel pretty good about it.
So pivoting off of Puka Nacua, I mean, I know that there's a couple guys in the $5,000 range and kind of the low sixes. Is that the direction that you're heading for these other couple wide receivers?
Yeah, I think Jalen Waddle at 61 is still interesting. Who else? Who else are they going to throw to in Miami? And I know he didn't have like the breakout game that we were hoping for, but I think he was good enough last week. Chris Olave 5,100, especially if Alvin Kamara is out, I think is really intriguing. And then the less popular guy, and maybe this is more of a GPP play, but I really like Marvin Harrison Jr. this week at Indy.
That's really fun. I saw that one, and my eyebrows rose on that one.
I don't. It's narrative-y, but like, and if Kyler's out, I don't think I can do it. But speaking of which, I might be going to that game. One of our good friends is friends with one of the quarterbacks who would be elevated if Kyler misses. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, I mean Harrison, if Kyler's out, I think is at least fun. Michael Pittman, we talked about him last week quite a bit. I think he's still underpriced. He's been touchdown dependent. He scored a touchdown in 3 straight games now, but he has new life. And with Daniel Jones at quarterback, he's underpriced at 5,400.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, like I said, my eyebrows raised when I saw that Marvin Harrison Jr. is playing in Indianapolis, where obviously he was born. I don't know if he was born there, but he's definitely raised there. We got Stephon Diggs at 5,800. I think that one is again potential letdown spot, but I mean he's been cooking in the last 2 weeks and seems like he's feeling pretty good. I don't know that it would be a cash game play, but Calvin Ridley at 4,900. I heard a really good point today that Ridley, for the slow start of the season, he did start against, the Derek Stingley started against. We just had a Jackson Dart first touchdown. Of course we did, Devin. Of course we did. Anyways, so yeah, we saw Derek Stingley. We saw the cornerback for Denver. Why am I blanking on his name? Patrick Surtain. So we've seen some tough matchups for Ridley. 4,800 or 4,900. That might be a way to get there too. Let's look at tight ends in cash game.
Stop the show. Like, no, we're not actually stopping it. Jeff and I were talking right before, and I'm like, Jackson Dart first touchdown. Sure enough,
you put it into the universe. You got to do it. That's just.
No, I said it had to. I said it had to be 20-1. It was 16-1, and I chickened out. That's on me. And that was my one good pick of the week, and I didn't put it on the air. Tight ends, Darren Waller, $4,000. I don't know. That seems like a pretty easy one.
So it's just too much to go up to a guy like Tucker Kraft going up against the Bengals at 4,700, or just Waller's just that sweet spot.
You could. I just think. Kraft has been very good. He's been very, very good. But Waller has been very touchdown dependent. So like, there's a floor there that's going to crash, and when it does, it's going to crash hard. I think if you can afford to go up to 4,700 or even Tyler Warren at 4,900, I think that Warren might be like going forward my number 2 tight end behind Trey McBride for the rest of the season, and like pushing for that number 1 spot, just because what they're doing with him in the red zone in particular, like they're starting to use him like they did at Penn State, which is exciting. So And
Yes.
McBride doesn't catch touchdowns, which is his biggest downfall, although he's done a little bit better this year.
Yeah, then you've got Jake Ferguson sitting there at 5,300 too in that similar ballpark. But
Thank you. I mean, I know Jake Ferguson was better last week, but going into last week, he was averaging 6 yards a catch. He's still averaging
he's catching 13 balls. So I mean,
I know, but 6.6 yards per catch is so low. And I know he had 2 touchdowns last week, but I don't know. That's not. It's hilarious if you look at his stats on ESPN. They have it where it ranks. Receptions, he's second.
Yep.
Yards, he's tied for 30th. Yep. Average yards per catch, it just says 150 plus.
I know when I was writing my target report this week and kind of looking at his numbers where he's running, looking at where he was trending to, it was something like he's flirting with basically being on a 140 catch pace, which is absolutely insane. And then I looked at the yardage and it was 900 yards, and it was oh.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane.
You catch 150 balls and gain 800 yards.
Right. It's Alvin Kamara, I think, is at 3.2 or 3.3 yards per catch, which is also ridiculous, but hey.
All right, let's go with our GPP plays now. And GPP quarterback plays. It could have been Jackson Dart, your GPP quarterback play, but he is not on the main slate. But let's dive in. What are you going to go with GPP plays on quarterbacks here? Is this where you're touching Joe Flacco, or is this where don't know?
It depends. I think for Flacco, it's really going to be about where his percent roster is going to be. And if I look at where I have these guys as of Thursday night, Flacco's pretty low. He's only at 3%. I think he gets a little bit higher than that. But it really, we try to make these percent roster not what Devin's perspective is, but more what the industry is thinking. So if he's a 3% roster, he can sling it. They're big underdogs. Will Green Bay take the air out of the ball and just kind of get their run game back on track, because Josh Jacobs has been pretty terrible this year. He's scoring touchdowns, but not doing a lot more than that. So I think Flacco at 4K is fine. You can certainly build some interesting lineups with him and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and come back with a Tucker Kraft. That's an interesting stack. But I think the name that I'm looking at this week, I'm going back to Mac Jones. I don't think San Francisco is going to be able to run the ball against Tampa Bay. And Brock Purdy doesn't seem like he's coming back this week. So it's at least intriguing to say, hey, he threw for 380 yards last week, something like that. So I certainly think that he's more than capable of having a big day at 5,600. Other guys that I'll look at, Dak is getting some love, but I don't love Dak on the road. Carolina's defense is always a little tricky because their run defense isn't very good. So I don't know that I'm going there. But the other name that I will throw out, I think that Justin Herbert's going to be pretty popular. He is every week. People love to play him. He's easy to stack. It's easy to game stack. So if the Chargers score, especially with Amari and Hampton out, if the Chargers score 30, you're going to be in a really good spot when it comes to a Chargers a Chargers stack that might have two or three wide receivers there.
Jordan Love, I think, is interesting too, going up against the Bengals defense. And you mentioned just running the ball, taking the air out of the ball. Could also get to multiple touchdowns on the way to doing that. So I think that might be an interesting play. But I think you're there on Mac Jones. And it is funny because it wasn't that long ago that Baker Mayfield was the automatic mute when Phil mentioned it. And now Baker Mayfield is the number one quarterback on the slate in terms of value, of price. So that's as the world turns.
Yeah, and Trevor Lawrence might get there too, so we'll see.
Well, if Lawrence can fall down first and pick his nose before he goes, then maybe we've got a couple rushing touchdowns in play. Running backs of GPP play running backs, and we've touched a handful of these guys through the cash game. Or you mentioned Josh Jacobs going up against Cincinnati. Where are you looking for your running backs here?
I do like Jacobs. I think if there's a guy who has 3 touchdown upside that's not Jonathan Taylor, it's probably Josh Jacobs. They need to get him right. He hasn't been good this. Like I said, he hasn't been very good this year when it comes to like yards per carry and just overall involvement. Ashton Genty at 6,900. He wasn't able to build on his week 4 like breakout performance, but there were still some encouraging things that I saw last week. Most notably, like he averaged 4.8 yards per carry last week. But what's interesting about that is his longest run last week was only 12 yards. So a lot of the issues with Ashton Genty has been like he's getting 0 yards, 1 yard, like consistently getting stopped at the line of scrimmage. We didn't really see that this week. It was a consistent 3, 4, 5. He didn't break one, but he also caught 5 passes, which was the most that he's caught in any game. So I think it's 6,900. We've talked about Tennessee not having Tavondre Sweat and what that's done to their defense. So I think that he's certainly interesting as when it comes down to running backs there. Is Derrick Henry just dead?
Might be, or that offense might just be dead. That entire franchise feels I don't know. I have never seen anything like this. I feel like we've seen some teams fall off the rails, but where they were week 1 coming into the season expectations and where they sit right now, it's like Jesus.
Do you want to play a game?
Sure.
Derrick Henry, 168 yards his first game of the season. How many yards does he have in his next 4?
Next 4 games after that first game of the season, I would bet 152.
142.
142.
He's averaging 37 yards per game over the last 4 games. And he is averaging 11 and a half carries per game over his last 2. Like, what are you guys doing? I know last week like doesn't really count, but the second they fall behind 7-0, they just abandon the run. So I don't think I'm going there. I just wanted to call that out because I spent some time researching it. Kyren Williams, 6,300. Talk about another guy who has that 2 or 3 touchdown upside. We already talked a little bit about Kyren, but did just want to call him out. Quinshad Judkins, we talked about him. Rico Dowdle, we talked about him. Travis Etienne, I'm not going there. I can understand the argument as far as the boom or bust type potential, but not for me. That's kind of it. I don't really want to go too far down the list. The Chargers guys, I'm not really interested in either. Like if I had to pick one, I'd pick Kamani, but not really wasting my money there.
Yeah, I mean to play one of them, I think my biggest thing with the Chargers backs, I mean I've seen people say that they are throwing a lot to Marion Hampton, and that means that they're going to throw it to a running back. That means they were throwing it to a Marion Hampton. That doesn't mean they're going to throw it to a running back. So that's I don't know that I'm there on one of those guys. You're asking for multiple touchdowns, basically. And at that value, that's capable of doing that against Miami, the team that was roasted last week by Rico Dowdle. Javonte Williams, I don't think we have mentioned him yet at 6,400 going up against Carolina. I mean, that would be the thing to do of, our defense is actually going to show up because Rico's been talking. And meanwhile, we're going to get Javonte Williams 3 touchdowns to show, we're okay at this position. But that might be a little bit interesting. If Kyler plays, Michael Carter at 5,300, I think is interesting. If he doesn't play, I really don't know that I want anything to do with the Cardinals without Kyler Murray at quarterback, even so much as we are concerned with Kyler Murray's play. Wide receivers. Let's look at wide receivers for GPP plays.
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting with Marvin Harrison. I think that his price is just too low. And even with Jacoby Brissett, like it's not, I don't think it's the end all be all for Jacoby Brissett. In fact, it might help Marvin Harrison as far as Brissett locking on to his number 1 guy. 60 yards or more in each of his last 2 games. Yeah, I know he's deep ball dependent, but in a GPP, you don't really care about that. So could he have a 100-yard upside? People are not going to want to play him, especially if Kyler does miss. Who else? Let's look through this. George Pickens is going to be incredibly popular, and I don't know. Probably it makes sense. I think he's certainly been very good, but is he that guy that like you have to play this week? I'm not so sure. The interesting name on the same team is Ryan Flournoy or Flournoy. I don't know. 3,600.
Ryan Flanoy. There's no R apparently.
There's definitely an R.
There's not in the pronunciation. So
you know what I'm calling him, Jeff? I'm calling him Flower Boy.
Ryan Flanoy was one of my favorite rookies in his class. He actually followed me on Twitter, so that was fun doing the rookie guide and finding him in I think it was Southeast Missouri State. I think was the school.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was. I really liked him as a prospect, and it was great to see him break out last week in that game.
But 3,600, like if he's able to do half of that, and maybe he's a cash game play. I don't like.
Well, he was the product of. I think there was some fair amount of that was supposed to be KaVontae Turpin. I think in that role, and then KaVontae Turpin missed the game, and so I think it was that type of. They had schemed Turpin into that role, and then he missed. So kind of the plays were in there, and Ryan Flanoy just stepped up and did them.
Good job, Flower Boy. I really hope I don't get canceled. Like someone's gonna take that so badly. It is not intended to be. So I apologize if I offended anybody by that. Devontae Adams, I think, is always a good pivot off of Puka Nacua if Nacua gets really popular. Stephon Diggs, we talked about him. Who else? Just looking through my list. Michael Pittman, we talked about. I think that's everything for me.
And one of the Packers receivers seems interesting to me, whether it's going to be Romeo Doubs or Matthew Golden. Again, I mean, to say one of these guys is not really exactly giving a GPP play, but the only player in the league capable of running a goal line slant is Romeo Doubs, and it just works every single time. But then hate the matchup. DK Metcalf at 5,500. We saw that massive first half against the Vikings team that has allowed the fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver position. I mean, maybe it clicks after that bye there with Aaron Rodgers, but the Browns have really shut down just about everything. You've got the Chargers offense that's looking to find itself, get rolling again. Ladd McConkey at 5,700. At some point, if you're looking for solutions, at some point you would think that maybe Ladd McConkey might be your solution to the problems there with that offense. Josh Downs, I think, at 4,300 is interesting. We saw last week he was used heavily early in the game, and then they just blew out the Raiders. They didn't really need to use that all game. So I think that would be a way under the radar play because they unplugged it. They used him very, very early. Then they just unplugged their whole offense. Geno Smith was just throwing the ball to them every single play. So they didn't really need to rely on that passing game at all. Tight ends. GPP plays at tight end.
David Njoku is probably my favorite guy. Was really heavily used with Dylan Gabriel, 6 for 67 and a touchdown. I think it's interesting because we've been talking about Njoku for a while and how the Browns. I still believe that they're going to trade him. And maybe not. Like if he becomes Dylan Gabriel's number one target, Jerry Jeudy needs to be cut at this point. The guy can't catch a cold. The amount of drops that he's just continued to have all season. I think he led the NFL in drops last year as well. So they went from Amari Cooper, who can't catch the ball, to Jerry Jeudy, who can't catch the ball. So things are going great for Cleveland. But 3,500, I think that Njoku is a really good price. For some reason, they didn't up his price after last week's game, which was somewhat surprising. Tyler Warren and Tucker Kraft. I'm not playing Jake Ferguson because of that 6.6 yards per catch. Is there any interest in Michael Mayer this week? I don't think so. I just don't think he ever has the upside. Like, we've seen this how many times where he's $3,100. People like him. He's projecting to be 13% rostered right now. Like, that just doesn't even make sense.
I think it might be right team, wrong player there, to be honest with you, because they played Ian Thomas last week, but then Albert Okwuegbunam is he's not Brock Bowers, but he can maybe, if you squint, do some of the things that Brock Bowers can do. So they can have that role that they've had Bowers' role. They can leave Mayer in kind of his role. And at 2,600, especially if all the attention is going to Michael Mayer returning, that could be a way under the radar play. Jake Tonjes, you talk about Mac Jones. They utilized Jake Tonjes pretty heavily. They've really utilized him a lot the last couple of weeks. We saw a Tampa Bay defense that AJ Barner had a great game against last week. And then just a deep off the radar name, potentially Gunnar Helm at 2,700 has kind of taken the job from Chico Okonkwo. It's an ugly offense, but it's going up against a Raiders team that we've seen be basically in give up mode. And they've been pretty excited about Gunnar Helm. I think you could find him into the end zone. It is time now for our stacks of the week. Devin, what's going to be your stack of the week?
My favorite stack of the week is going to be... I'm going Bryce Young, Tedoroa McMillan, and George Pickens. I'm not going to quit Tedoroa McMillan. I know his price keeps going up and the production doesn't, but he's been okay. But I just don't believe in this Dallas defense at all, and they continue to show that if you want to have realistically, you could have as crazy as it is, if you wanted to run two lineups, you could run a stack of just play Dowdle and Javonte Williams in the same lineup. And so you have the quarterback, wide receivers, you have the running backs in a different lineup. And if that game goes off, then you're kind of covered from both ends. There certainly is a scenario where you could play all of them, but that's a little too risky for my blood. I don't really play that way. If Phil were here, he would tell me that's probably the smart way to play. But yeah, that's the game I'm targeting.
I hear you. I think I'm going to go. My favorite stack of the week is just the Packers onslaught against the Bengals, going with Jordan Love, going with Josh Jacobs, going with Romeo Doubs, maybe Tucker Kraft instead of Romeo Doubs. Let's say Tucker Kraft instead of Romeo Doubs, but just kind of play it that way. Go against getting just that offense, getting healthy, getting rolling. Maybe they're a little bit upset that Joe Flacco beat them with the Browns, and maybe Joe Flacco can't exactly get anything going at all. Sets that offense up in good position against a team that I don't think they've given up. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe they have. Favorite discount play of the week?
Sterling Shepard, 3,800, going up against San Francisco. He's had 11 or more DraftKings points in each of his last two games. So if you can get somebody or two of his three last games, so if you can get a player like that for 3,800, if he catches a touchdown, you're in fantastic shape.
I'm gonna go Xavier Legette with the Carolina Panthers. We saw Xavier Legette bounce back last week, caught a touchdown, had a big play later in that game in one of the game-winning drive. And so I think Legette going up against this Dallas defense, you've got him sitting down there at 3,900. Similar price as Sterling Shepard, but a low-value entry point into the game that everybody wants a piece of. That's all we got. So it only takes 40 minutes when Phil's not here. So Phil, we hope you're doing great, and we are excited for when you'll return. Devin, do you have any kind of parting or smart or any sort of words for the people to send them on their way?
We might have a special guest next week. Our good friend John Lee might be joining us, but so he might be joining us a couple times this year. So I'm trying to talk him back into the show out of retirement. So I know people have been asking for John to return. But I put his, instead of saying we might have a special guest, I am saying let's be firm. John Lee will be back next week. Thanks everybody.